Hola, almas exploradoras. Hello, exploring souls. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about polyamory. So the first question would be, have I always been polyamorous? And the answer would be yes. I just didn't know until my early 20s. But before we get ahead of ourselves, I want to talk about what polyamory is. What is polyamory? So poly is for Greek meaning many, and amor is in Latin meaning love, which in other words it is many loves. And a more descriptive term that other people sometimes use as well is ethical non-monogamy. So monogamy, you feel for and have relationships with only one person. Another way of being monogamous is being a serial monogamous person. So serial monogamy is people that date a lot of people throughout their life, but one at a time. Polyamory, on the other hand, is more on a spectrum. There are many ways to live a polyamorous lifestyle, and the spectrum includes sexual and or romantic connections. Some participants in polyamorous relationships identify with poly as an orientation. Being open to multiple loving relationships is an intrinsic part of who a poly person is. Asking them to be monogamous goes against their nature. Other participants in polyamorous relationships may resonate intellectually with the philosophy of open loving, have a partner who identify as poly, or feel flexible in their relationship style, sometimes engaging in monogamous romantic relationships and sometimes polyamorous. Like I mentioned, polyamory is like a spectrum, so there are many ways to describe different polyamorous lifestyles. So polyamory is like an umbrella term, and so these are some of the terms that are under that and are different ways of sustaining polyamorous relationships. So there are triads, which usually consists of 3 people. Some people call them thruples, some people call them triads. It is basically the same thing. It is 3 people in a relationship. And even within a triad, there are different ways of maintaining that lifestyle. So there are open triads and there are closed triads, which means that an open triad is that the people involved in the relationship are open to having relationships outside of that triad. Whereas closed triads is people that have closed the relationship to only being in a relationship with those 3 people in that relationship. So they do not have relationships outside of themselves. So those 3 people are, in other words, loyal to each other. And if one of those people were to have an outside relationship outside of the triad, it would be considered cheating. Aside from triads, it obviously can expand to more people, where 4 people is quads, and it can also be the same way. It can be a closed quad or a closed triad, which some people actually refer to that as polyfidelity. Another way to have a polyamorous relationship is open relationships, where you are open to either only sexual relationships out of your primary relationship, or you're open to emotional and sexual relationships outside of that, but they are considered secondary to the person you are already with first. Generally, in open relationships, you already have a primary or a nesting partner. So primary and nesting partner can be both the same person, but they don't mean the same thing. The person that you're in a relationship with that is considered your primary, they have a little bit more of a say in your life and your other relationships. They have an input. How far that input and of a say they have is completely up to one's self. And the difference with nesting is that nesting simply means the person that you live with. So your primary and your nesting partner can be both the same person. You live with your primary person, but it could also mean different things. So you might not live with your primary partner because maybe you don't have primary partners, but you do live with one of your partners, and they would be considered your nesting partner. There are people that don't have primary or secondary partners, and that means that they view all of their relationships equally. So with this, there are two different styles to have a relationship, which is the hierarchy relationship or relationship anarchy. So hierarchy just means that there are different levels. So there is your primary, secondary, and tertiary relationships, and so on. And they have different levels of importance to you and importance in your life, and they have more of an input, etc. Whereas relationship anarchy basically means that your relationships may have different dynamics, but they are not based on levels. So there is no priority in your relationships. There is no relationship more important than the other. They are all equal, though they may be different. Other ways that people also experience the polyamorous lifestyle where they don't include emotional connections is having sexual partners, or swingers, where you switch partners for sexual encounters. There are also mono-poly relationships, which is a monogamous person with a polyamorous person, meaning that the polyamorous person is open to having relationships outside of that relationship, whereas the monogamous person is only with that one person. Solo polyamorous is another style where you basically consider yourself as your primary partner, and the rest of your partners are all equal, kind of like in the relationship anarchy. So solo polyamorous people tend to usually want to live alone and not live with a partner. However, there are some that do have nesting partners, but even then, sometimes they may choose to live with a friend instead of a sexual relationship partner that they already have. Or they may even live in a household where there are many of their partners, or like I said, they can choose to live alone and separate from all of their partners. Solo polyamorous also means that they don't really have people have much of a say in their own lifestyle. They're very independent per se. So other terms within the polyamorous relationships are polycules. So polycules basically means the group of people that you are connected to, whether they are your partner or they are your partner's partner. So your partner's partners are usually referred to as metamors. There are many ways to make these connections where a lot of people don't date the same person, or some people do end up making the same connections within the polycule. Sometimes it expands a little bit more, but all it means is that if you have a partner that connects to somebody else and they connect to somebody else, and all of those connections basically are called your polycule. So in polyamorous relationships, you get to choose your own boundaries and limits and rules and your own dynamics, so it can look very different from one person to the next. And so there are a couple of ways that people tend to choose to have their relationships when it comes to either meeting or not meeting the people that they're connected to, so their polycule. So there is the parallel poly, which is the metamors you do not meet. So basically choosing not to meet your polycule, only being connected to your partners and not meeting their partners. Whereas if you have a kitchen table polyamorous relationship, it means that you are open and willing to meet your metamors. So you meet your partner's partner, and like the name says it, it's kitchen table poly. So you are comfortable sitting at a table for dinner and talking and hanging out and spending time with both your partners and their partners. And that is it for today. So I just ask that you please stay tuned for part 2, where we will talk about how to figure out
whether you are polyamorous or not, and if the polyamorous lifestyle fits you better or not. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe. Have a great day.